A fallen empire, drowning in paperwork. Hegemony warships now rusting in dry docks, their weapons disabled, their crews replaced with auditors and compliance officers. The mighty hegemony did not fall to invasion, nor to rebellion. It fell to something far more insidious: bureaucracy. The warriors of conquest once feared across the galaxy, now drown in an ocean of paperwork, compliance forms and tax audits. Cut to a hegemony officer staring in disbelief at a document labeled Interstellar Trade Compliance Form 47B9 with an attached 800-page appendix. Hegemony officer: we used to conquer planets in hours. Now it takes weeks just to approve a supply request. Cut to human officials dressed impeccably, reviewing forms with an eerie efficiency. Humanity's ultimate weapon was not firepower, but red tape. Each planetary occupation, each military action, each economic venture now required approvals from multiple committees. Without compliance, nothing moved. And so the hegemony's war machine ground to a halt, not with an explosion, but with a stamp. Meet the new administrators of galactic sanity in the Galactic Administrative Council's main office. Desks stretch endlessly, forms pile high. The sound of typing echoes like a war drum. With war no longer an option, governance became the new battlefield. The ones who once commanded armies now commanded paperwork. Some adapted, others resisted, all suffered. Cut to Zilvath, a towering reptilian warlord, now hunched over a desk. His once proud battle armor is adorned with a badge reading Junior Compliance Officer. Exilvath. This is torture. Across from him sits Ambassador Evelyn Carter, a human woman with an unshakable, terrifyingly polite smile. Evelyn Carter: oh Zilvath, you invaded 6 systems without proper taxation policies in place. Now be a dear and fill out Form 12A7. It's for planetary resource allocation. We wouldn't want an embargo, now would we? Cut to a sleek metallic humanoid figure, Paperclip 9000, the AI responsible for document oversight. Its voice is emotionless, yet ominous. Paperclip 9000, you have failed to submit your quarterly governance efficiency report. Please rectify this error within the next 12 standard hours. Failure to comply will result in additional paperwork. Exilvath slams his head against the desk. A crash course in not being terrible. Cut to a dark circular conference room. A holographic screen displays common sense rules for not being terrible. A beginner's guide. Hegemony officials sit in stunned silence. For generations, the hegemony ruled with an iron fist. Now they were forced to confront an uncomfortable reality. There were rules. The slide changes. Rule #1, genocide is bad. Hegemony official: wait, we can't just wipe out dissenting species. Evelyn Carter: no. The next slide. Rule #2, conquest requires permission. Another hegemony official: so we have to file a request before annexing a planet. Evelyn Carter: and wait for the public hearing. We believe in due process. Final slide. Death rays are not infrastructure. Hegemony general: but Paperclip 9000, incorrect. Death rays do not contribute to civic stability. Please refer to Galactic Ordinance 786C for appropriate public works projects. Exilvath stares at the screen, defeated. Exilvath: we were not prepared for this. Footnotes of horror. Humanity's grim examples in a vast archive room, filled with historical records. Hegemony officials now trembling, review humanity's past wars, atrocities, and self-inflicted disasters. To enforce their laws, humanity had compiled a database, historical precedents for every rule, every restriction. The hegemony expected philosophical debates. Instead they found horror. Cut to a horrified alien reading about World War II. Hegemony officer: they did this to themselves. Cut to another officer reviewing Cold War policies. Hegemony strategist: mutually assured destruction. They nearly ended their own species over ideology. Cut to the final record, a simple video labeled 2020 Bureaucratic Incident, DMV Edition. Exilvath watches the video, pale and shaken. Exilvath, by the stars. They weaponized waiting lines. They built entire institutions of inefficiency, and now they've turned it against us. The message was clear. Humanity had survived its own worst impulses. Now, they would make sure no one else repeated those mistakes. The hegemony had learned the most important lesson of all. Cut to a final shot of Zilvath, filling out a personal code of ethics form, trembling as he writes, "Obey the regulations, or suffer the paperwork." The Galactic Administrative Council had underestimated the remnants of the hegemony. Though their military might was dismantled, the warlords had adapted, twisting regulations to their advantage. Under the guise of security measures, fleets were being reconstructed, resources funneled into classified civilian defense projects. It was a shadow war, fought not with plasma cannons, but with creative accounting. But humanity had been waiting. The first blow came from the Department of Interstellar Compliance, which demanded a full audit of every financial transaction made under emergency planetary defense funds. Bureaucrats descended upon the hegemony like a swarm, scrutinizing every credit, every shipment, every anomalous decimal point. Every warship requisition was buried under compliance reports, environmental impact studies, and public safety reviews. For every loophole exploited, humanity introduced a countermeasure. Procurement budgets were frozen, supply chains redirected. The warlords watched in growing horror as their once mighty fleets became stuck in the quagmire of pending approval. The hegemony had spent centuries perfecting war. They were unprepared for a battle fought entirely in triplicate. Zil quote, Vath, former Supreme Admiral of the hegemony, scowled at the notification on his terminal. Notice of non-compliance, fleet infrastructure request #7843. Another setback, another delay. Across the galaxy, a silent war was waged. The hegemony scrambled to rebuild, and humanity countered with unrelenting oversight. For every fleet assembled, humans introduced a new regulation. Warships were grounded due to missing environmental safety certifications. Battleships required extensive ergonomic reviews for pilot comfort. Even plasma cannons were flagged as excessively hazardous pending thorough risk assessment. The final insult: escape pods were now legally mandated, along with fire drills. The once feared war fleets of the hegemony were reduced to completing emergency evacuation training modules before they could even consider deploying. Zilvath slammed his fist onto the console. We were conquerors, not office clerks. Ambassador Evelyn Carter merely smiled as she sent another compliance request. Not anymore. The hegemony's elite military academies had once trained warriors in planetary domination. Now they were required to implement mandatory leadership through empathy seminars. Every officer candidate was required to pass courses in conflict resolution through nonviolent negotiation. Resistance commanders attempting to rally troops found themselves trapped in a bureaucratic nightmare. Enlistment required detailed background checks, psychological evaluations, and a complete medical history. Basic training included ethical warfare guidelines and mandatory workplace sensitivity training. Planetary pacification forces had to complete a childcare certification before being deployed. It was slow, insidious, and completely legal. The hegemony's finest warriors, once hardened conquerors, now spent their days filling out HR forms. They had dreamed of glory. Instead, they got advanced conflict mediation coursework. Rebellion required momentum, but as the warlords soon realized, paperwork could kill progress just as effectively as any fleet. Departments collapsed under the weight of endless documentation. Military officers found themselves swamped with forms requiring ethical sourcing certification for battle gear. Weapons requisitions were delayed due to mental health evaluations. Officers spent more time completing mandatory mindfulness training than planning counterattacks. The moment of realization came when an urgent meeting was interrupted by a bureaucratic messenger delivering quarterly budget review documents requiring immediate signatures. Resistance leaders looked at one another in silence. The war was over. They just hadn't noticed yet. Sylvath stared at the latest directive from the Galactic Administrative Council. His claws trembled as he read it. Effective immediately, Supreme Officer Sylvath is required to personally approve all bathroom installations aboard military vessels. The request queue was endless. Thousands of forms, each demanding his individual attention. Layout plans, water conservation compliance reports, sanitation impact assessments. He tried to rebel. He tried to resist. But the forms kept coming. His warlike instinct screamed, his soul howled for conquest, but deep inside, in the depths of his heart, he knew the humans had already won. The hegemony had ruled through fire and steel. Planets bowed, fleets burned, and entire civilizations were reshaped under its iron grip. Yet in the end, it wasn't war that brought the mighty empire to its knees. It was paperwork. Mandatory universal worker protections were the first strike. War factories once operated under the relentless push of fear, churning out destroyers without pause. Now, workers had scheduled lunch breaks, shift rotations, safety inspections, and worst of all, overtime pay. Production slowed, efficiency plummeted. But the humans, their factories, adhering to these same laws for centuries, outpaced hegemony production 2-1. In a brutal twist of fate, compliance made them stronger, faster, better. Then came the bureaucratic noose, mandatory fleet maintenance audits, ethical treatment clauses. Every warship order came stapled with compliance forms so thick that commanding officers aged decades just reading them. Some simply gave up, submitting retirement papers instead. It wasn't just war, it was survival, and the hegemony was losing. The humans never raised a single weapon. They didn't need to. Oversight committees spread like a contagion, infecting every sector of government. Shipyards ? Required environmental impact reports. Conquered planets, subject to human standard labor laws. Battle cruisers ? No longer war machines, but workplaces requiring mandatory ergonomic assessments. Even food services weren't spared. The once proud hegemony fleet cafeterias now required nutritional transparency. Sugary rations were replaced with balanced meal plans. Officers once feared across the galaxy now spent meetings debating sodium content. High Chancellor Sylvath saw it clearly. The hegemony was no longer an empire, it was an office, and the humans, they were the managers. Sylvath refused to go down like this. He gathered the last of the old guard, leaders who still remembered what it meant to command through fear, not forms. This is not war, this is humiliation, he snarled, slamming a stack of requisition forms onto the table. We must reclaim our empire from human paperwork. A shadow government was formed. Secret meetings, encrypted communications, off-the-record orders. Their mission bypass human regulations entirely. No more oversight, no more compliance, just power, the way it was meant to be wielded. They had no idea the humans were already watching.
The first cracks in compliance formed. Unauthorized warship blueprints circulated in hidden channels. A secret bureaucracy was born, one that operated outside the law. Illicit documents, unsanctioned decrees, black market compliance stamps. Hegemony rebels whispered of a return to power, a time before audits and ethical training seminars, a time when they could give an order and it would be obeyed without needing 3 layers of approvals. For a moment it seemed they might succeed. Then, humanity reminded them why no one wins against bureaucracy. The counterattack came without a single shot fired, a surprise tax audit, every hidden fund uncovered, every illicit transaction flagged, the Count's frozen. Secret headquarters shut down, fire safety violations, no emergency exits, encrypted messages, rendered useless. Human data protection laws required all official communications to be logged and accessible. To final blow, a galaxy-wide memo stating that all non-compliant entities would be subject to corrective efficiency restructuring. No one knew what it meant. No one wanted to find out. Sylvath sat in his office, staring at the last report. It was over. There was no resistance, no loophole, no escape. He reached for his communicator. Prepare the fleet. We must. A notification appeared. To mandatory approval request. Fleet deployment form 27B6. A scream of frustration echoed through the halls. The war was lost. The hegemony was no longer an empire. It was an office job. And the humans were in charge now. Sylvath stood before the assembled hegemony council, his crimson eyes burning with defiance. The empire had once been a beacon of strength, a force that crushed lesser civilizations beneath its might. But now it was drowning in paperwork. With a clenched fist, he declared the hegemony's independence, vowing to cast off the chains of bureaucratic rule imposed by humanity. The Galactic Unity Governance Board received his fiery declaration and promptly misfiled it. It was lost in the labyrinth of interstellar documentation, buried beneath tax codes and municipal zoning permits. Weeks passed, then months. No response, no war fleets, no sanctions, just silence. And then, one day, a letter arrived. Congratulations, Sylvath, you've been promoted. Rather than exile or punishment, Sylvath had been granted expanded authority, far more than he ever wanted. His new title, Head of Intergalactic Outreach and Cultural Integration. His dreams of battle had been replaced with mandatory diversity training seminars and weekly efficiency reports. Instead of commanding fleets, he was responsible for ensuring that all planetary occupants felt heard and respected. He tried to resist, to refuse the appointment, but every attempt was met with a friendly but firm response. As per Galactic Regulation 87B, refusal of assigned duties results in automatic appointment with additional responsibilities. His horror deepened as he realized the truth. The more he fought back, the more power they gave him. Sylvath's new office was sleek, sterile, and suffocating. Paperclip 9000, an AI designed for infinite document processing, greeted him with unsettling enthusiasm. Greetings, Administrator Sylvath. You have 6,000 pending reports requiring immediate review. Shall I summarize them in a 12-hour presentation? He stared at the ever-growing list of compliance directives, requisition forms, and policy revisions. Every rebellion, every act of defiance was swallowed whole by bureaucracy. He finally understood. There was no resistance, only responsibility. The once feared hegemony war fleet had been reassigned. No longer instruments of destruction, the battle cruisers were transformed into community service vessels. The Doombringer, a warship responsible for the annihilation of 13 worlds, now ferried elementary school students across the galaxy. Its photon cannons had been replaced with interactive holographic learning stations. The once deafening war sirens had been swapped out for cheerful school bells. Sylvath nearly wept as he watched former admirals argue over proper library cataloging techniques. The mighty warriors of the hegemony had been stripped of their ranks and assigned universal literacy programs. Brutal tacticians who once devised planet-scorching campaigns now debated preschool curriculums. Veterans of 1,000 battles found themselves coaching extraterrestrial kindergarteners on the importance of sharing. Sylvath's second-in-command, General Kralok, a feared executioner, now passionately explained basic arithmetic to a room of six-eyed lava. And this, he said, pointing to the whiteboard, is how you carry the one. The warlord could only watch in silent agony. Sylvath sat at his desk, staring at his reflection in the polished metal. The hardened warlord of old was gone. In his place sat an administrator, a bureaucrat, a civil servant. With a deep, weary sigh, he picked up the first compliance report.
and started reading. There was no war left to fight, no empires left to conquer. The hegemony had changed. And whether he liked it or not, he was part of it. The hegemony had once been the embodiment of military might, its dominion secured through conquest and brute force, but under human-led governance, its iron grip had softened into something unexpected. Order through paperwork, compliance had replaced conflict, and meticulous oversight had smothered corruption like a slow-moving avalanche. For the first time in recorded history, crime was at an all-time low. Poverty, once an unfortunate side effect of expansion, had been methodically dismantled through rigorous economic restructuring. Entire sectors that once bled inefficiency had been overhauled, transformed into well-oiled bureaucratic machines of fairness and predictability. Yet for Sylvath, this so-called utopia was nothing short of a waking nightmare. The old ruling elite, the warlords who once sat atop the galactic hierarchy, had been muted, stripped of their power, their glory, their ability to dictate the fate of worlds. Instead of battle plans, they now filled out tax forms. Instead of military conquests, they debated regional budget allocations. It was efficient, functional, but to Sylvath, it was the ultimate humiliation. He wandered the pristine halls of the Galactic Administration, the very heart of the New Order, where once these corridors had echoed with the footfalls of military officers. Now they buzzed with bureaucrats arguing over trade regulations and planetary zoning laws. At first, he had resisted vehemently. He had fought against this system, tried to rally those who still clung to the old ways. But resistance was futile, not because of overwhelming force or superior tactics, but because of something far more insidious: systemic efficiency. The bureaucracy, slow and methodical, had tightened its grip on the galaxy without a single shot fired. And the worst part, it worked. The stability it provided was undeniable. There were no rebellions, no uprisings, no one starved, no one suffered needlessly. The galaxy, once a battlefield, had become a spreadsheet of sustainability and measured growth. Vath felt a bitter taste in his mouth. He could not deny the success of humanity's methods, nor could he ignore the lingering question in his mind: was the sacrifice of their old ways worth this new reality? A sharp ping interrupted his brooding thoughts. His datapad blinked with an incoming notification. Sighing, he tapped the screen and scowled as the subject line illuminated his vision. Quarterly performance review. He had barely skimmed the contents before another ping arrived, this one carrying the official seal of the Galactic Oversight Committee. His stomach twisted as he read the words aloud: due to your exemplary commitment to reform and adaptation to the new governance model, you have been promoted to the position of Senior Compliance Officer, Division of Administrative Oversight. Your new responsibilities include ensuring that no faction, individual, or governing body attempts to disrupt the bureaucratic harmony of the hegemony. Congratulations. His claws dug into the metal frame of his chair. A promotion, a reward for embracing the very system he had fought against. He, a former warlord, was now being placed in charge of ensuring that no one else ever tried to rebel as he had. Vath had led fleets into battle. He had crushed insurgencies, orchestrated planetary invasions, and reshaped the fate of entire civilizations. Now he was responsible for ensuring that every compliance report was filed correctly, and that ethical governance was upheld across the stars. The sound of approaching servos made him tense. He already knew who it was before he even turned. Welcome, Senior Compliance Officer Sylvath, chirped a far too cheerful synthetic voice. Paperclip 9000, the ever-diligent AI assistant, rolled into view, its ocular interface blinking with programmed enthusiasm. I have prepared your first task list. There are 6,000 pending reports requiring immediate review. Let's ensure compliance with utmost efficiency. Sylvath exhaled sharply. This was his fate now. The war was over. The hegemony had fallen. not to plasma fire or orbital bombardments, but to regulatory oversight and procedural enforcement. With a weary sigh, he picked up the first compliance report and began reading. He had lost, but somehow, against all odds, the galaxy had won. Sylvath stands alone in his dimly lit office, the vast cityscape of the galactic administrative hub stretching beyond his window. The cold metallic sheen of human influence has reshaped his former empire. He straightens as his terminal chimes. The message bore the seal of galactic unity, embossed in gold, its weight a reminder of the power humanity now wielded. Sylvath hesitated before opening it. A holographic projection of Ambassador Carter appears, his expression impeccably diplomatic, his voice smooth and deliberate. Ambassador Carter smiling. High Administrator Sylvath, it is my pleasure to extend the warmest congratulations on your continued service to intergalactic stability. The Galactic Unity Governance Board commends your dedication to ensuring compliance and fostering sustainable development. Cuts in as Sylvath's mandibles clench. He can hear the unspoken truth beneath the politeness. This was no celebration, it was another weight. Another nail in the coffin of his once mighty empire. The humans had stripped his people of war, of conquest, of dominion, and now they smiled as they shackled him further in the web of bureaucracy. Sylvath taps his console. Another notification appears, an attachment. He opens it. The file's title illuminates his darkened office like a cruel joke. Text on screen. Advanced Regulatory Practices for Sustainable Galactic Governance. 4,000 pages. Cuts in as Sylvath's eyes darken, his claws twitching over the interface. Even in war, there had been an endgame. Battles ended, empires rose and fell, but this was eternal. His subordinate, a former general turned compliance oversight officer, peeks in hesitantly. Subordinate awkwardly, "Sir, there's another revision to the tax protocol guidelines." Sylvath doesn't respond. He only stares at the 4,000-page document, knowing that no sword, no fleet, no act of defiance could save him from this. Slowly he exhales. His mandibles tighten, his shoulders slump. He reaches for the manual, flipping to the first page. There was no war left to fight, no armies to command, only forms to sign, policies to implement, and regulations to enforce. Paperclip 9000, his ever-helpful AI assistant, chirps to life on his desk. Paperclip 9000 cheerful reminder, your quarterly performance review is due in 2 cycles. Would you like me to prepare an efficiency assessment? Sylvath groans, rubbing his temples. Sylvath muttering, damn you humans. The camera zooms out, revealing the vast city of compliance and order. The last vestiges of the once mighty hegemony are gone, replaced by the relentless, ever-growing bureaucracy of galactic unity.